Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Bernotas, the Director of Instrumental School Methods and Repertoire for Alfred Music. And I'm so excited to be here with one of our best-selling percussion authors, Peter Erskine. Peter conducts clinics, classes, and seminars worldwide and teaches at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles and at the Royal Academy of Music in London. He was awarded an honorary Doctor of Music degree from the Berklee School of Music and has won a Grammy. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today for 5 questions with Peter Erskine. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. It's good to be here. I'm sorry, may I correct you? It's two Grammys. I got them represented
Whoa,
there.
2 Grammys. I did not mean to take one of those away from you. Never would do
Well,
that.
and you know what my teacher used to say: the two Grammys and 75 cents will get you a ride on any bus in Santa Monica.
Well, that's two more than I'll ever have. So
No,
pretty cool. I'm going to get right into our questions. Hopefully, it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's been great actually just talking a little bit even before this happened, our live recordings. So I hope I'm glad to share this behind the scenes kind of chat with you. So that's kind of what we want our audience to kind of feel too. So the very first thing I'd like to ask you is, what is your most prominent memory from your school music program growing up?
um, this answer may surprise people, um, but when I read your question, I was determined to go with the first answer that came to mind. Uh, and the most enduring memory was playing the triangle in the symphony orchestra at the Interlochen Arts Academy when I was a freshman, and it was in the autumn there, early autumn, it's beautiful weather, and it was a piece called Petite Suite, and I was in the percussion section, and I played the triangle part, and the reason I have such a good memory of that. Uh, Not just because it's a delightful piece of music, but uh, that seemed to uh, kind of be a welcoming, like an invitation that this is the world of music that awaits you, and I was thrilled to be part of this sound that was much bigger than any one thing I had ever experienced.
I kind of love that it's the triangle that you focused on because it would seem like such a minimalist thing, but it's one of those instruments that there's no forgiveness, and it's heard very
Uh,
clearly.
that's a very good observation. In fact, after I had gone on the road for several years, I returned to college. I had left school to play with the Stan Kenton band, and so I returned to college, and I had gotten a much heavier touch as a result of playing in this loud jazz band. And at one point, my professor handed me a triangle beater and pointed to a triangle that was mounted on a stand in the corner of the room, and he said, "Mezzo piano." He says, "You get one chance." So I play it, and he smoked a cigar, and he took the cigar out, and he shook his head left to right, and he went, he said, "That was too loud. Now get out." And that was my lesson. So uh, what I began practicing were just whole notes. And I would do this over and over until I was, happy with the consistency and how softly could I play and what kind of control. Um, and that was the beginning of my quest of really, not so much of learning how to play soft, Chris, but really learning how to get a good tone. And I can say with confidence that more than anything else, tone, even or especially with the drum set, is a really critical part to how any beat is going to come out sounding or feeling.
Yeah, that critical thinking aspect, and that's one of the things that I, as a teacher, would often teach all my students about is that critical thinking and critical listening, and it's just as important percussively as it is for a wind player. And it's interesting to just get that message across to students. I mean, the patience you have to practice that whole note, and even just to wait and to think about the sound, how it's resonating, and how to adjust your touch or where you're hitting, and all that. It takes a lot of concentration, and I think it's another one of those things. The triangle is not a forgiving instrument. What can you learn from that? And then you have to learn how to be patient, and that trial and error and that critical listening is so important no matter what instrument you play. uh,
I think so. And just to add to that, Um, to anyone watching this out there who is, whether you're wrestling with your instrument or you're dancing with it, um, let your instrument and let your hands and body tell you what's happening. I really try to pay attention to the sound, to the, when I warm up, it's never like, oh, I'm going to warm up for 5 minutes, and then pat myself on the back like, oh, good, I warmed up for 5 minutes. It, I may warm up for 2 minutes. I may warm up for 20 minutes. It's all about getting in touch with my hands and seeing how the motion looks and feels and the tone. And it's a lovely way to start each musical day with your instrument. You're I think you're kind of paying respect
Yeah.
to the instrument and the art of music making, and that's important. I think throughout human history, we've all depended upon some form of ritual, and so for musicians, practicing is part of that ritual. It's fun. We love to do it. We if you really like to play, there's nothing that's going to stop you.
Right.
But that ritual of of uh, of being kind of one with your instrument, uh, clarinet, snare drum, piano, you know,
Yep. We're all
um,
alike.
yeah, and we're all very lucky that we get
Yeah,
to do this.
that is true. Which leads me to the next question, because we talked about your memory, your prominent memory from education. Who would you consider to be your most influential teacher?
Well, can I list two teachers?
Sure, of course.
Thank you. Um, George Gaber, the percussion instructor at Indiana University for many years. I met him. I was 10 or 11 years old, but I took my first lesson from him when I was 12, and I knew from that moment forward that I would want to study with him at Indiana University, and that's the only school I applied to, and I went there. Uh, and his lessons have lasted a lifetime. The other really important teacher was a gentleman. His name is Dave Sporny, Sporny, a trombone player and teacher. He lives in Massachusetts now, but he was the jazz band instructor and band director at the Interlochen Arts Academy. And even though he wasn't a drummer, whenever he would sing phrases to the big band, he'd like to the trumpets. He'd say, "Trumpets, I want it to be like ba ya da shatuka da boom ba da da da," and he would always sing like the perfect drum fill. Um, and and uh, and he made sure that I did as much listening as possible. He would invite me over. The teachers all lived on or just right off the campus grounds in log cabins for the most part. So
Oh, wow.
he would invite some of us over to his log cabin, and his wife would make us hot chocolate, whatever, and we would just listen to the latest jazz record that he felt we needed to hear, which included the very first Weather Report album. He was like, you got to hear this." So uh, those were the two most important teachers. Maynard Ferguson as a boss was a really excellent teacher, and Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter were both great teachers in the Weather Report group.
Wow.
So I count myself as very lucky.
Yeah, that's just pretty amazing. And it's great that those lessons have stuck with you. And I think that's what the hallmark of a great teacher or experience is that it doesn't matter how many years ago it was that experience was, you can still immediately remember it or draw upon it when you need it. That's awesome. So speaking of what, oh, go ahead.
Of course, I should mention my father as well. He was a very important teacher that way in terms of life lessons. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking of Weather Report, I mean, it's hard to not think of the song Birdland. We've all loved that song, and all of my students have always loved it. And it made me think, of course, I'm going to talk to you this week. So I start looking at some, and I start noticing, boy, all the recordings of Birdland are really long, right? They're long duration. So then I started to think, how do you play such long pieces and performances, but still stay fresh and energized throughout a long piece? How do you do that? Like as it's going on, do you ever get tired, or What energizes you with a long piece?
Yeah, I don't know if fresh is a word that I would wouldn't be my first go to. But when you're in the heat of playing, uh, you you do whatever it takes to play the piece. I mean, that band and Joe Zawinul in particular, he liked his long vamps, um, and I I did the best job I could. The band was loud. I had actually had a kind of a different vision when I joined the band of what kind of drummer I might be. But they brought me in because I had the power. Jaco Pastorius heard me playing with Maynard, and the fact that I could navigate and as well as steer or captain the boat of a big band. He knew I could handle any of the ensemble stuff that Weather Report was doing, and I could play with enough fire or energy. Um, and so that's where that band was at. It was a pretty high volume situation. Some of the tempos were extreme. Um, Before gigs, I would do 100 jumping jacks backstage. I would run in place, really
Wow.
try to get the heart rate up. So when I hit the stage, it wasn't a shock to the system, and then that included warming up. I would always warm up.
I would imagine though, like when you say when you're in the battle of a song, when you're in the heat of a song, do you lose sense of time? Like maybe you don't even realize how long a piece is when you're in the middle of it all, right? Or
Yeah,
do
I
you
mean
know?
you're sort of aware of the a general shape or arc of a tune. I was telling a story earlier today to Christian McBride as part of an NPR uh, look back at Weather Report and Joe Zawinul. Uh, if you don't mind, I'll tell the
No,
story
no,
here.
go right ahead.
I had gone up to Joe with what I thought was a good suggestion. Joe being Joe Zawinul, uh, because this particular tour, the lighting rig was lower, closer to the stage than other ones had been, and so when the lights were all turned on, it got very hot. It felt like you know we were baking in an oven, and the final tune of the night was even faster than Birdland, and it lasted longer. Um, and I said, Joe, to make sure I don't run out of steam, when I feel like I'm getting near the end, can we agree on a signal, and then I can go into afterburners and give you my very best, and the show ends, and everyone will be happy. So I just got a bit of a cryptic, oh yeah, and and so that night at the concert, when I give him the high sign, like, all right, I'm giving it everything I got, he just smiles and he leans into his keyboards and he gets very loud. He steps on the volume pedal, and he plays through the ending, and now we have to do a whole cycle for a few minutes again. And now I'm playing the drums more out of anger than anything else. I'm hitting really hard. Uh, and finally, okay, he made his point. Now we end. He signals the end. The lighting guy out in front hits the switch. All the lights go off. Peter doesn't stop. I'm hitting the snare drum pretty much in anger. And as I'm doing it, I realize the lights have kind of come on. My eyes are more or less closed, but uh, wow, how does the show end? What do I do now? Hey, oddly enough, this reminds me of like some of the first drummers in Weather Report. I mean, there was tremendous drama. Um, and and then Chris, I opened my eyes because I sensed something, and there's Joe Zawinul. He's climbed up on the bandstand, and he's leaning over the tom toms, and there's his face right in front of mine, and I was afraid he was going to like bop me in the nose or something. Instead, he just looks delighted, and he goes, yeah, 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 and jumps off the drum riser onto the stage, pumps his fist in the air. I end. The concert's over. Um, I didn't know what to think of it. The next day, the manager came up to me at the sound check for the next concert, and I said, Peter, Joe would like to see you. So I'm thinking, well, I'm going to get fired.
That's it.
And I follow the manager to the band dressing room, and we open the door, and there's Joe, the rest of the band, and the entire crew. And everyone has a little plastic cup with cognac. And they hand me one, and Joe raises it up in a toast, and he announces, he goes, everybody, last night, Peter graduated. So, what that moment of extreme physical playing and even anger, it catapulted me into, for the first time, really being my own musician in that group. I stopped being the sideman, the drummer that plays for your pleasure, and became, I wouldn't say an equal voice, but became more of a pillar, which for an improvisational group is important. So I kind of went from being drummer to actually being a musician in the band. So that's sort of how I measured my growth uh, in the group. The willingness to kind of jump off the
Yeah,
edge of the
that's,
cliff.
I think that's an amazing lesson actually too. It's like, you stood up for yourself in a sense, right? And by doing that and by taking a risk, it kind of propelled you to the next level, like you said.
Well, yes, and maybe that was a known or an unknown. I mean,
Yeah.
um, characters like Joe Zawinul and some record producers like Manfred Eicher at ECM, on one level or another, they seem to have studied Machiavelli. They can bring about a set of circumstances that either test or may generate uh, a response, hopefully a desired response,
Right.
um, which is not a thing that you can safely do as an educator, for example. You
Right.
know, so the lessons I learned were more old school. Um, the language was not PG rated, and some of the lessons were tough. It's a different age now, and I think that's all for the good. So the challenge is trying to create the expectation for musical excellence and encourage musical independence uh, while toughening up our students and also making them good listeners so that ultimately they can contribute to any ensemble they're in.
That's awesome. It's great, great lesson. What a great story. All those stories kind of wrapped in together are fantastic. All right, next fun.
Bit of a long one. I apologize.
That's okay. I'm sure everybody loves that. I love it. So if I love it, I'm hoping everybody else will too. All right, here's the next fun question for you. If you weren't such an all-star drummer, what instrument would be your second choice?
Well, I studied trumpet when I was younger. Um, of course, I studied percussion, and I studied piano. And something that in the book that I co-wrote with Dave Black that Alfred publishes, The Musician's Lifeline, we asked the question. Um, if there's one thing that you could have done differently in your career or in your education, what would that have been? And so my response to you is similar to the overwhelming number of answers we got from 165 musicians who answered the questionnaire, and the overwhelming uh, unified response was that they wish they had taken piano more seriously. And so if I could go back to school again, I would study counterpoint. To be honest, Chris, I think if I could have been a composer, that would have been my favorite thing. But I think to really be a good composer, you really need to be a pretty decent piano or keyboard player.
Yeah.
Um, so that would be it. But I'm a drummer, and I do love playing the drums. So
That's
there you
great.
go.
And I did ask Dave. Dave was on our 5 questions yesterday, and I did ask Dave because I also got to co-author with Dave on our book, Sound Percussion Method book.
Mm.
So I did get to ask him 2 questions. One was, did he tell us some secrets about Peter, which he didn't. He didn't tell us any secrets. And the second thing was, who was your favorite co-author? So, and he wouldn't commit. So I think we're both his favorites.
His favorite what?
His favorite co-author.
Oh,
He's got a lot
you.
of. No, no, it's you. He's got a lot of favorites. So that's the. All
Yeah,
right.
I would guess it would be Sandy.
You know what? Dave is just such a great human being. He actually had something wonderful to say about each one of us because his experience with all of us has been different and unique and served different roles. And it's just, it was a perfect Dave answer. And I really, I'm appreciative, just like you are, for all the experiences that have come my way and the people that I've gotten to work with. I just feel very fortunate to have been in all the situations. And we are in a relationship business. So you build a relationship with the people you work with, and they're all unique and equally important. So it was a fun question for him,
Very
which,
well put.
thank you. Here's my next fun question. What would be your favorite food?
What would
It,
be or what is?
what is? Dinner is
Oh,
tonight. You get your choice. What is dinner?
spaghetti.
Oh, I'm with you on that. That's a good choice.
Pasta pomodoro, just the most simple spaghetti with tomato sauce, uh, is my favorite. Um,
Fantastic.
I like sushi. I like hamburgers. Um, uh, my wife is my favorite cook. I love her cooking. Uh, Before the pandemic, I would just always indulge and overindulge. Um, since the pandemic, um, I was bragging to you earlier. I've managed to lose 35 pounds. Um, she's exercising portion control, and so without my traveling and being too self-indulgent, um, and eating at odd hours. When you're on the road, you just eat whenever you can.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, my no question, my favorite food is spaghetti pomodoro.
Excellent. And I love that choice. All right. I know it's 5 questions, but my last sixth question for you, because I'm going to give a bonus question because we saw your awesome setup in there. And why not play a little bit on our outro, which would be, what would be your favorite groove? And maybe you can play a couple of seconds for us.
Well, um, my favorite groove is maybe not very exciting, but here goes.
There you go. You know what? That was exciting because it was extremely musical. All right. I
Yeah.
want to thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. It was so much fun for me. It was great to talk with you. And I really appreciate your time for joining us. And thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Great fun for me, and thank you and everyone at Alfred uh, for getting the good word, the good notes, the good music out there. Uh, it's one way we can all stay connected by reading, by studying, using this time to just get better and enjoy more. What we do with our musical instruments. And folks, take it from me. I've been playing a long time. Music will always be there for you. It will never leave you. You can always depend on music. Okay.
Absolutely. Great words to end by. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. See you next time.